This video is heavily inspired by Galio Molly's 10 stages of every character videos. Go check them out. They're pretty good. Yeah, enjoy the video. Despite if it's your first time loading up fighting or a returning player, you search for a character that might catch your eyes and then you are beholden to Vinestaff. This female support character who has a somewhat eye-catching design with the shades of pink and just the fact she is probably a female character, which is not expected at all to be completely honest. But you look at her and not even her kit and think to yourself, wow, she is pretty, I should try her out. Which would open into a rabbit hole of healers, and hey, maybe we could find a fun character in this journey. On first impressions playing Vine, you might find her damage so pitiful. Maybe you just jumped into her kit without reading anything about her, which is a huge mistake. You might try to be aggressive or try to do some damage with her until you might realize that Vinestaff isn't supposed to be damage oriented like a lot of other fighters. Or maybe you just don't have the hang of her projectiles yet. You try to spam sprouts as soon as you get them, and don't really bother trying to place them around the team and whatnot. You also sometimes fire out your Q or E randomly, just because you have no clue what they do. You might even die during the first few seconds of your ult and pretty much throw it away. And you'll also blame your team because you don't really feel much respect for your team, apparently not defending you. Please don't be toxic, kids. You might have run into Vinestaff's kit at one point and now realized her healing relies heavily on her M2. You also try to stay away from being aggressive, however you might play a little too passively as you desperately try to land your M1 shots or E to gain sprouts to spam M2 healing. And hey, you get to have the top healing spot of some sort during it at the very least. You also simply try to get used to the M1 projectile, but you aren't really being smart much with the sprouts. More or less just spamming M2 still, but you seem to slowly get the hang of trying to place sprouts around your teammates as best as you can. You still get vulnerable when someone is on you, but you can start to try and manage that. You also now start queuing teammates more strategically, but it's usually not getting much value on weaker teammates, and you do sometimes land your E's to get sprouts or some decent chip damage. And while you still mess up ults at times, you can live long enough to utilize it with your teammates. You're growing steadily. While still getting the groove of damage output with your tools, you start to feel some type of pattern in healing teammates. You start to be a little more thoughtful of sprout placements on maps and place around teammates or even place on some different surfaces to make the sprouts hard to hit. The M1 aim is hellish still, but you try to find more slower targets to hit to at least try to maximize how many sprouts you can get despite the immense struggle. You could also try to use E in more defensive positions and give your Q to the big tanks of your team to maximize efficiency. You do sometimes get mad at your team for not being efficient enough, but either way, you can still feel that you have done a good job for your team, even if it didn't end satisfactorily. You've been playing Vinestaff for a while at this point, like a long while. You also must have stumbled on some tech videos by the one and only Yapno to learn about planting plants and some movement tactics. You try to start implementing these into your game plan on lots of maps to the best of your ability while still utilizing your M1 in such to great effect. You simply just try to improve more and more with every time you play her. Even in Annihilate where she is deemed bad, you try your hardest every time to get better and get your aim down greatly. You have been consistently using Q on your tanks and using E in more defensive positions to not die, and maybe thinking to yourself, they might be an insane Vinestaff player. You suddenly find yourself coming to scrims. After realizing open server players aren't so bright and pro servers aren't so full, you decide to take a stab at the more competitive environment. You will definitely see the whiplash of the environment with communications and being a high value target that people will want eliminated, but you test your skills with actually good players. On the bright side, you can finally showcase your healing and show yourself as a very valuable asset on a team. However, you also see the dark reality of Vinestaff being pretty much unplayable in Annihilate. The absolute lengths of being targeted and having no real methods to live in the more dive-centric game mode makes players feel like Vine is more of a detriment to their team. Some players might feel off about their supporting and feel that they might not be helping as much as they are. So sometimes people might pick up another fighter with Vinestaff as a more annihilate-centered pick, or completely drop her as either she isn't fitting a mold of a fighter you like, or your mentality thinks she isn't worth all the practice you put in. You might get tired of being such a high-value target in scrims and whatnot. You like Vinestaff, but something different hits the itch. And this is fairly normal. Some Vinestaff players pick up a fighter that could be useful in Annihilate, or a fighter that could hold their own in many different scenarios that make up for Vinestaff's shortcomings, and sometimes they just need that backup. Vinestaff can only do so much for a team, and they will always have their limits no matter what. The characters are fun, and while you love Vinestaff at her core, you just can't help but just want to play anyone else. But despite all of that, Vinestaff just calls for you for some reason. At this point in time, you have probably done one of two things: gave up on Vinestaff or continued going. If you have continued going, you have pretty much learned how to maximize your efficiency. You aren't necessarily pub stomping lobbies, but your healing numbers start to rise a lot and hit some great numbers, and more experienced players absolutely value your help to a team. You aren't the best with aiming and still sometimes fumble your moves, but your cues are calculated. Your E's are in best use of not only yourself but teammates, and most of all, your healing is absolutely great, and the Vinestaff has accomplished her big goal: being a helpful asset. And with more healing comes a greater sense of accomplishment. You've done all this progress. What else is there to do? You have been simply doing small improvements with Vinestaff with what maps you do, what team comps you do, what game modes you do. Literally everything involving skill and some luck. There's nothing much to learn at the end of the road here. It's simply a matter of getting more and more better at the game as time passes by. You might keep playing Vinestaff. You might stop playing Vinestaff. Whatever you do, however, the experience opened your eyes in ways you didn't think of. The constant regenerative healing, the sprouts, the ability management, it will all stay a part of you as you reach whatever levels you are willing to go to. This is the 9 phases of a Vinestaff player, and it's only up from here. Vinestaff is nothing but simple pain and agony. At this point, you might not even know what the point of the Vine journey was. You don't know the purpose of this long journey when it was ultimately for nothing. Why did you do this? You did this to yourself. There's no going back. Vinestaff will take you over.